Hello students, today I will be taking the very basic topic of biology which you must have studied in 8th standard, 9th standard, 10th standard. In detail you will be studying in 11th standard, and this is the base of 12th standard, that is cell cycle and the cell division. Now there are two type of organisms. One is known as the unicellular organism. Unicellular organism means the body of an organism, it is made up of single cells like amoeba, paramecium, yeast, bacteria and euglena, etc. So these are unicellular organisms. And the second type of organisms, they are multicellular organism, that is the body of the organisms that is made up of innumerable cells, the example of which are lower organism and the higher organism. Like lower organism like sponges, flatworms, roundworms, earthworm. The large organisms like cow, dogs, even the human beings, they are multicellular organisms because the body of these organisms are made up of many cells. Now whether it is the lower organism like a sponge or a flatworm, or they are large organism like dog, cow or even the human, the life of the organism, ये organism की life जो है, it always starts from zygote. So what is zygote? Zygote is a single cell. It is a single cell which form the base of the body of an organism. इस single cell से multicellular organism की body बनती है. So this zygote, which is a single cell, how this zygote is formed? This zygote is formed by fertilization between the male gametes and the female gametes. So this is, I am talking about sexual type of a reproduction, where the male gametes are there and the female gametes are there, and they fuse together. The fusion of male and the female gametes, that is known as fertilization, and after fertilization a single cell is formed, and that single cell is known as a zygote, which form the base of the multicellular organism. So this zygote, which is a single cell, if it has to give a multicellular organism, so it has to divide. So this zygote show the cell division, it divides innumerable type. As a result, the body of a multicellular organism is formed. So that means the zygote is a single cell which we cannot see, and the organisms, they are easily been seen. That means cell division, why that cell division occurs? Cell division is very important and it is essential for the growth of an organism and for the development of the organism. So the cell division is a very important part of the body of an organism. Now in this cell division, first we will talk about what is cell cycle. Cell cycle का क्या मतलब है? Now if a newly formed cell is there, अगर कोई cell जो है वो अभी अभी बना है, so this newly formed cell, it shows many events. A series of events are shown in this cell, and ultimately this cell divides into two. That means it gets duplicated during the cell division. So a newly cell form, it shows many events. We will be talking about all these events, and ultimately a single cell give rise to two cells, which is known as a cell division, or the duplication of that cell takes place. Now the period between the two successive cell divisions, that means if a new cell is formed and that new cell shows many events, and during that events the various things which are present inside the cell like mitochondria, Golgi apparatus, the chromosome, etc., they show duplication, and after duplication the cell again divide. So the period between the two successive cell division, दो cell division के बीच में जो period है उसको हम cell cycle बोलते हैं. So in another way we can say when a cell is created and that the cell is formed after the division, that is known as a cell cycle. Now if we see the duration of the cell cycle, duration of the cell cycle in different organism is different. Like bacteria, it is a unicellular organism. This bacteria divides, that means one cell of bacteria divides into two, or one bacteria gives rise to two bacteria in 20 minutes. So the cell cycle in bacteria is of 20 minutes, whereas the yeast cells, yeast is again a fungi, but it is a unicellular fungi. Now in this yeast, the cell cycle, that is of 90 minutes. That means one cell gives rise to another cell after 90 minutes. Whereas in human, we are talking about general. In human, one cell gives rise to another cell. That means the cell cycle takes around 24 hours. That means the cell cycle, the duration of the cell cycle, that is different in different organism. Now this cell cycle have two phases. इस cell cycle के दो phase हैं. One phase, first phase, it is known as an interphase, and another phase is known as an M phase. M phase indicates the mitotic phase. So these are the two phases of a cell cycle. Cell cycle consists of two phases. One is the interphase and the second is the M phase, that is a mitotic phase. Now first we will talk about the interphase. Now पूरी cell cycle में around 95% duration of the cell cycle is there in the interphase. Interphase is a very long phase. Total cell cycle का 95% duration is of interphase. Now in the interphase, during the interphase, certain changes takes place. One thing, the material which is there inside the cells, cell के अंदर जो material है, it gets duplicated. The material gets duplicated. That means cytoplasm का क्वांटिटी इंक्रीज हो जाता है, माइटोकॉन्ड्रिया का नंबर इंक्रीज हो जाता है, देयर इज एन इंक्रीज इन द साइज ऑफ द सेल बिकॉज ऑफ डुप्लीकेशन ऑफ द मटेरियल. अगर किसी सेल के बीच में जो मटेरियल है वो डुप्लीकेट हो जाएगा तो नेचुरली द साइज ऑफ द सेल विल इंक्रीज. सो ड्यूरिंग द इंटरफेस द मटेरियल इनसाइड द सेल it gets duplicated, as a result of which the cell size increases. Now inside the nucleus के बीच में there is a genetic material known as a DNA. You must be knowing that in the cell there is a nucleus. Inside the nucleus एक molecule है and that molecule is known as a DNA. So this DNA का full form is deoxyribonucleic acid, or it is also known as deoxyribose nucleic acid, which is a genetic material. Genetic material means this DNA passes from one cell to another cell. When one cell divides into two, the DNA, it passes from one cell to another cell, and the genes which are present inside the nucleus, they are made up of DNA. So the genes are made up of DNA. If I say the genetic material gets duplicated, that means the gene also gets duplicated. Now the duplication of the DNA की जो duplication है, that is known as a DNA replication. So what is DNA replication? The duplication of the DNA is known as a DNA replication. So in the interphase, the DNA replication takes place. DNA is present inside the nucleus, which gets replicated, means which gets duplicated. Now you must be knowing that inside the nucleus the chromosomes are present. Now these chromosomes are made up of DNA, and I told you that the DNA is the base of the gene. Genes are also made up of DNA. So these genes, they are present on the chromosome. The genes are present on the chromosome. Chromosomes are present inside the nucleus. Nucleus के अंदर chromosome present होते हैं, and these are thread-like structures. Now during the interphase, these chromosomes which are present inside the nucleus, they are in a dispersed condition. That means you cannot see count the number of chromosomes present inside the nucleus. They form a type of network. And that network is known as a chromatin material, or this network is made up of a chromatin material. In other words, you can say these chromosomes are made up of chromatin material, and this chromosomes or this chromatin material during the interphase, that is in a network form. So because it forms a network, there is a पूरा नेटवर्क बन जाता है. एज ए रिजल्ट यू कैन नॉट काउंट द नंबर ऑफ क्रोमोसोम्स. नाउ इनसाइड द साइटोप्लाज्म के अंदर देर इज वन स्ट्रक्चर जस्ट अबव द न्यूक्लियस. न्यूक्लियस के ऊपर एक और स्ट्रक्चर प्रेजेंट होती है, एंड दैट स्ट्रक्चर इज नोन एज अ सेंट्रोसोम. नाउ दिस सेंट्रोसोम ड्यूरिंग द इंटरफेस it gets divided into two, and those two structures which are formed from the centrosomes, they are known as the centrioles. So how many centrioles are there? There are two centrioles, and these two centrioles, they lie at right angle to each other. Suppose one is in a horizontal position, the other is in vertical position. So the two centrioles which are formed by the centrosomes, they lie at right angle to each other. That means the division of the centrosome takes place inside the cytoplasm. Okay, so these are the changes which takes place in the interphase. This interphase, okay, just for easy description or just for easy understanding, this interphase is divided into three subphases. So there are three subphases of interphase. One is known as a G1 phase, that is a gap 1 phase. Other is known as an S phase, that is a synthesis phase, and the third is known as a G2 phase, that is known as a gap 2 phase. Okay, now these are the three subphases of the interphase. Or you can say, what is an interphase? Interphase is a period between two successive phases. That means between two mitotic division there is an interphase. Now if we see the interphase, suppose this is a cell cycle, ये पूरी की पूरी जो है, this is a cell cycle. As I told you that 95% of the cell cycle, that is the interphase. This is a G1 phase, this is a S phase or the synthetic phase, and this is the G2 phase. That means पूरी सेल साइकिल का 95% जो है, इट कॉन्स्टिट्यूट द इंटरफेस, एंड ओनली 5%, ये जो ब्लू कलर का है, ओनली 5% of the cell cycle constitute the M phase, that is a mitotic phase. Okay, now this is M phase or the mitotic phase. Now in this mitotic phase, again in the mitotic phase, certain changes takes place, and those changes, they are known as the nuclear division. Nuclear division का मतलब है the nucleus, because inside the cell one nucleus is there, but when the cell divide during the M phase में cell divide, and when the cell division takes place, the first of all the nuclear division takes place. The nuclear division को karyokinesis भी कहते हैं, karyokinesis. So what is karyokinesis? Karyokinesis is followed by the interphase. Interphase के बाद when the M phase starts, so M phase और द माइटोटिक फेज का जो फर्स्ट फेज है, दैट इज़ नोन एज ए न्यूक्लियर डिवीजन, विच इज़ ऑल्सो नोन एज ए कैरियोकाइनेसिस. जब ये न्यूक्लियस दो में डिवाइड हो जाता है, उसके बाद साइटोप्लाज्म भी दो में डिवाइड हो जाता है, बिकॉज एम फेज इज़ अ माइटोटिक फेज. माइटोटिक फेज मीन्स एक सेल से दो सेल बनते हैं. सो first the karyokinesis or the division of the nucleus takes place. After that there is a division of the cytoplasm, and the division of the cytoplasm is known as cytokinesis. So in the M phase, first the karyokinesis takes place, then the cytokinesis takes place, and after the cytokinesis the two cells are formed. अब न्यूक्लियस भी दो में डिवाइड हो गया, साइटोप्लाज्म भी दो में डिवाइड हो गया, तो दैट मीन्स दो सेल बन गए. अब बोथ द सेल्स विच आर फॉर्म्ड, दे एंटर इनटू द इंटरफेस, एंड आई टोल्ड यू व्हाट आर द चेंजेस विच टेक्स प्लेस ड्यूरिंग द इंटरफेस. सो इंटरफेस में कोई डिवीजन नहीं होती है, ओके, कोई साइटोप्लाज्म की डिवीजन नहीं होती है, न्यूक्लियस की डिवीजन नहीं होती है, बट सर्टन थिंग्स आर फॉर्म्ड विच आई विल बी टेलिंग यू. सो interphase is also known as a resting phase. So ये M phase जो है it constitute just 5% of the total cell cycle. This is a total cell cycle, and G1 phase, S phase and the G2 phase, these are the three phases of interphase. और इस तीन phases में भी जो S phase है, that is a synthetic phase, that the duration of this is maximum. You can say G1 phase जो है वो सबसे छोटा है, G2 phase उससे थोड़ा बड़ा है, whereas the S phase जो है synthetic phase जो है that is very the duration of which is very large. Okay, and this is the karyokinesis. That means M phase में karyokinesis का जो phase है it is a bit longer than the cytokinesis. Cytokinesis का जो duration है it is very less. Okay, now if we talk about what are the changes which takes place during the G1 phase, S phase as well as the G2 phase. First is the G1 phase. Now G1 phase, as I told you, it is a period between the mitosis and the initiation of the DNA duplication. Remember, DNA duplication इस phase में नहीं होता. Very important thing we have to remember is during the G1 phase the DNA duplication doesn't take place. So no DNA duplication occurs during the G1 phase, but during the G1 phase the cells are metabolically active. Metabolically active का मतलब है these cells form many material. Which material? Like there is a synthesis of RNA. RNA again is a nucleic acid which is known as a ribose nucleic acid. हमारी बॉडी में हमारे हर सेल के अंदर दो तरह के न्यूक्लिक एसिड्स हैं. Okay, one is known as a DNA, that is deoxyribose nucleic acid, and the other is known as an RNA, that is ribose nucleic acid. Now during the G1 phase duplication of the DNA doesn't take place, but there is a synthesis of RNA, there is a synthesis of protein, and there are synthesis of many enzymes which are required for the DNA synthesis. DNA synthesis होता नहीं है, DNA duplication होता नहीं है, but the things which are required for the DNA synthesis, like RNA is required during DNA synthesis, proteins are required during DNA synthesis, many enzymes are associated with the DNA synthesis. So the material which are required for the DNA synthesis takes place during the G1 phase. That is why we say that in the G1 phase the cells are metabolically very active because they have to produce so many things. After this G1 phase, which is the smallest phase of the interphase, the cell enter into the S phase. S phase is synthetic phase. Now इस synthetic phase में DNA जो है वो double हो जाता है. So the duplication of the DNA takes place during the synthetic phase. Remember I told you the chromosomes are made up of a DNA. अब DNA की synthesis तो double हो गई, but number of chromosome does not increase, but the क्रोमोसोम जो हैं दे गेट रेप्लिकेटेड. दैट मीन्स ये क्रोमोसोम का जो डीएनए है वो डबल हो जाता है. दैट मीन्स ईच क्रोमोसोम इट कंसिस्ट ऑफ 2 सिस्टर क्रोमेटिड्स. दैट मीन्स उसके 2 सिस्टर क्रोमेटिड्स बन जाते हैं, बट द नंबर ऑफ क्रोमोसोम डज नॉट इंक्रीज. सपोज वी से द इनिशियल अमाउंट ऑफ डीएनए इज 2C, देन ड्यूरिंग द एस फेज द डीएनए का अमाउंट जो है वो इंक्रीज हो जाता है. एग्जैक्टली इट गेट्स डुप्लीकेटेड. 2C से 4C हो जाएगा. सपोज वी से इनिशियली इट वाज 4C, देन इट gets duplicated into 8C. So remember during the S phase the chromosome number doesn't change. Number chromosome का change नहीं होता, but because the chromosomes are made up of a DNA, the DNA gets duplicated and each chromosome consists of 2 sister chromatids. So as it is written, the chromosome numbers remains the same. For example G1 phase में chromosome का number, किसी भी सेल में क्रोमोसोम का नंबर वो 46 है. लाइक ह्यूमन सेल के अंदर 46 क्रोमोसोम्स हैं. ओके, सो ड्यूरिंग द G1 फेज द क्रोमोसोम नंबर इज 46. वाई इट इज नोन एज 2n? बिकॉज दे आर डिप्लॉयड ऑर्गेनिजम्स. ओके, ड्यूरिंग S phase although the DNA synthesis gets duplicated, but the number of the chromosomes it remains the same, that is 46. Clear? So during the S phase the DNA synthesis gets duplicated, but the number of chromosomes are made up of a DNA, but number of chromosome doesn't increases. Second thing, the centrioles जो है, like centrosome में, the centriole, two centrioles are formed in the cytoplasm. I told you in the previous slide that in the cytosome, just above the nucleus, there is one structure which is present known as a centrosome, and during this S phase, the centrosomes divide into two. Those two things, two units of the centrosome, they are known as the centriole, which lie at right angle to each other. This is an S phase. After the S phase, there is a G2 phase. That is a gap 2 phase. Now, in the G2 phase, okay, the synthesis of protein takes place. Remember, the number of chromosomes remains the same. Which type of proteins are synthesized? The proteins which are required for the mitosis, because the next phase after the G2 phase will be the S phase. That is a not the S phase, it will be the M phase, that is a mitotic phase. So, during the mitotic phase, the various proteins are required, and the synthesis of proteins which are required during the mitosis or during the M phase, they gets duplicated or they are synthesized during the G2 phase, and during the G2 phase, the growth of the cell, it continues. So, these are the various processes which takes place during G1 phase, S phase, and the G2 phase of the interphase. Now, there is another phase which is known as a G0 phase. Now, this G0 phase is known as a quiescent phase. It is an inactive phase. Inactive phase का क्या मतलब हुआ है? There are certain cells in the body which does not divide when an organism become adult. Like adult में certain cells are there which do not divide at all. What are those cells? Like हमारे हार्ट के सेल जो हैं वो डिवाइड नहीं होते, हमारे नर्व सेल्स जो हैं वो डिवाइड नहीं होते. सो इन द एडल्ट certain cells are there which don't divide at all, like the heart cells or the nerve cells. So the cells of this heart or the nerve cell, they don't divide, they don't show the cell division, so they undergo an inactive phase जिसमें कि आगे interphase या mitotic phase नहीं होगा. So that is known as a G2 phase. There are certain cells in our body which divide occasionally. Occasionally means as and when required. Suppose हमारी body में थोड़ी injury हो जाती है and some cells are lost. So those cells which are lost during the injury, they have to be replaced. So in that case, our body need those cells. As a result, the cell division takes place. So there are many cells in our body which divides occasionally. Okay, now when they divide occasionally, when they are formed, they undergo in the G2 phase, and as and when their division is required, they starts dividing. Okay, after G1 phase, there is an inactive phase, which is now in inactive phase, that means G0 phase, which is inactive phase, the cell remain alive. Metabolic activities takes place inside the cell. Cell के अंदर metabolically a cell is active. Many things, proteins or the Golgi bodies or the mitochondria or the ribosomes, they are formed. So even in the G0 phase, the cell is metabolically active. But remember, G0 phase में अगर कोई cell है तो उसकी cell division does not take place unless it is required. When there is a need for the cell division, then the cell which are there in the G0 phase, they starts dividing. But there are certain cells in our body like human heart cell and the nerve cell which don't divide at all. So this is what is the interphase. In my next lecture, I will be talking about the mitotic phase, that is a cell division phase. Thank you, students.